Welcome, ladies and gents, to the universe of blood. If y'all ain't been privy to this wondrous world, then you've been missing out on some choice cuts, peeps. Starting in 2000 with the phenomenal theatrical feature Blood the Last Vampire and expanding exponentially with the series Blood Plus, this IP has grown to include a slew of light novels, manga, several games, a stage play, and a live-action remake. The original movie and Blood Plus share thematic elements and the same universe, but are not related to each other by very much else. But we're not here to talk about those. We're here to talk about the 2011 action horror series Blood C. Right off the bat, this work shares its predecessor's inclination to be in no way related to any of the previous Blood installments besides certain themes and tropes. You can watch this incarnation without ever investing any other time into anything else in the IP, and it'll make just as much sense. Which kinda, in turn, makes this show inconsequential. All of the stories might be independent, but Blood C doesn't contribute much to the overall mythos. It doesn't even explore ideas not already presented far better in previous stories. Compounding that, the series does not have the original's complexity and character depth, and thus makes it even more of a tedious sit because it is part of the same universe. If it were a standalone run, or its own show, I probably wouldn't be so critical, but because of what was built by the time Blood C came out, it fell far short of the standard. And I know the conclusion movie came out in 2012, but I'm not including that in this breakdown. The series is held by Satomu Mizushima, the director of XXX Holic, Another, and Prison School. So you would think that mixed in with the universe already built and the promise of gratuitous violence, we get a solid enough story and interesting characters. But the direction seems scatterbrained and less focused on providing an enthralling cast as they are just setting up meat for the slaughter. Let's discuss the opening of the first episode, shall we? The opening 10 minutes in episode 1 is so damn sunshine and rainbows, anyone, and I mean anyone, could figure out how much to hell this girl's life was going to plunge. It makes the first episode of Higurashi look tame by comparison, and though the darker half of episode 1 was middling at best, that doesn't mean it stayed that way throughout the show. This series gets brutal and unforgiving. It's going in dry and red-socking your insides. Seriously, it's faced hard censorship in Japan, and for what I can tell, it's still blacklisted in China. And like Higurashi, it follows a very strict pattern for the majority of the series. The morning and day segments are fun, sunny, full of smiles and friends, but when evening rolls around, it's like another anime entirely. However, with C, the tonal shifts are too many, too great, and they switch on a dime. There's another point I want to make about comparing this to Higurashi, and I'll get to it in a moment, but first, let's take a gander at the main character. One of the hallmark features of the film in Blood Plus is that the sires are mysterious, complicated characters grappling with something more serious to them than hunting monsters. They're conflicted characters, struggling to determine their place at the same time coming to terms with who and what they are. Now, initially the Saya in Blood C is the embodiment of an ultimate desire of a happy-go-lucky life, which becomes painful to watch extremely quickly. Not because of what happens to her, though story-wise that fits, it's because of how horribly one-note Saya remains throughout most of the series. Even the supporting cast points out her overzealous attempt at always remaining happy, which doesn't make it better or easier to swallow. She's too oblivious for it to be cutesy and only comes off dense. Now, fans of the show will tell me about this series' twists and how it relates to this, and you know what? We'll get to it in a second. To beat this horse even deader, her design looks like a knockoff of Yumiko from Read or Die. As a matter of fact, all of these cast members look like they belong in something else. Either they are that generic, or they have designs literally stolen from other works. Something seems familiar without it being very fun. There are definite moments of artistic flourish, but most of these people look like they'd be right home in a Corpse Party series. And speaking on the supporting cast, every character is difficult and boring.
Guys, this really happened to my father's ex-wife's brother-in-law's second cousin once removed.
That is a very specific relationship. I bet you lunch tomorrow, you can't say that twice.
Like, the same basic setup for almost every conversation, that sporadic, long, unnatural pauses with something completely unrelated ending the interaction, which pretty much all end horribly forced. The more pressure placed on one specific relationship, the more I expect of their imminent demise. Yes, I'm getting to it. Ready soon for spoilers and bunch up those panties. The series spends way too long on whimsical scenes in the first half of episodes that contribute less to the story than what it might aim to achieve. This slice of life injection into a horror action series won't salvage the people dropping this after the 3-episode test, because the plot takes until episode 5 out of 12 to get going, and normally I wouldn't mind as much, as you know that slow-moving anime never bother me, and some of my favorites are very slow, but there isn't much characterization or world building that takes place until this point. So much of this damn thing is following Saya to school and then enduring her fucking distractions. When finally supporting characters start getting picked off and the stakes actually rise, I didn't honestly care. Also, that fucking tune she sings is charmingly quirky for the first time, but after that, maybe it's just repetition for its own sake to fill in the gaps between bloodbaths. We're almost there, just one more detail I need to bring together, which is the Elder Barons, monstrous creatures with a penchant for human flesh. These creatures are vastly different than anything else in the Blood universe, and I honestly think that this is where the series starts to shine. The manga artist group Clamp, helmed by Nanase Okawa, who I know for their work on Code Geass, designed the characters and created the scenario. They've reported that their inspiration lay mostly in the old ones from H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos and modeled after monsters found in traditional Japanese fables, and the effect is 2 distinct reactions. Holy shit, this is pretty fucking awesome. Look at that. The fuck is up with everybody being slender and lanky? They look like if the gang from Paradise Kiss got flattened with a steamroller. The monsters are abominations birthed by way of genocyber fucking Claymore, and the gore they bring is goddamn repulsive. And I goddamn love it. Seriously, if you're looking for some cringe-inducing, blood-gushing scenes to really tighten your screws, then Blood Sea has got some good ones. If you've seen Another, you'll be very well acquainted with how Mizushima handles gore, and he doesn't pull any punches. And though you've probably heard the most about the infamous finale with the giant demon bunny rabbits, there are a couple other ones that I consider more intense and satisfying as to the role it plays to the story and to the consequences that results. Each Elder Baron's characteristic is always different, and they have their own specific strengths and weaknesses, though they all pretty much end up the same way, which is kind of annoying. And after seeing this series, I seriously think that this was the inspiration for Tokyo Ghoul. Humanoid creatures that fight off monsters with tentacles trying to eat people, and drinking lots of coffee. Now, why are the points that I've just mentioned usually taken as forgivable by Blood Sea fans? Turns out that Saya has been brainwashed into a fantasy world where everyone in her life are actors playing roles to test out what her reactions would be, and she is, of course, a vampire. And the one running the whole show was her closest confidant, Fumito Nanahara, who had abducted her to conduct this experiment, and he has been simulating her friends' deaths and manipulating Elder Barons to see the effect on Saya. Now, is this a bad twist? No, not really. Was the build-up and reveal poorly handled? Abso-fucking-lutely. The reason I kept comparing this with Higurashi is that Higurashi attempts to weave a mystery with clues peppered throughout each repetitive episode to allude to the truth. Now don't get me wrong, When They Cry is overflowing with overuse as well. It just knows how to make it worth it. Blood Sea has no build-up to its twist through the majority of the series, so when it happens, it is jarring, but not for the reasons that it should be. Just that it comes without much pretext, so it defeats the purpose of a mystery. The difference between Saya and Keiichi from Higurashi is that Saya is so annoyingly oblivious she never sees any details possibly alluding to what's really going on for anything but their face value. Keiichi actively works to figure out what is going on, never brushing off any instance of weirdness that may be discounted by the other cast, and his will is the main facilitator of the conclusions to each branch of the mystery. The mystery only exists if the protagonist is trying to uncover what is fact in a sea of lies. Truth finds Saya, and she doesn't do much with it, never learning or evolving. Now, the last 2 episodes of the series are pretty damn good, and just as you think you can settle in and enjoy a new stasis, it fast forwards through the last 3 setups so quickly that it makes the first half of the show even more tedious. Everything is just laid out in the open just to wrap it up, but not to actually provide a satisfying end to this particular chapter. And I know the end sets up the movie The Last Dark,
Headshot.
But that shouldn't and doesn't matter. The series should stand on its own, and the movie should only provide further closure and clarification, like Psycho-Pass and Evangelion, not half of the story, which actually doesn't even do much to even serve that purpose. What I can say is consistent is that Naoki Sato's score possesses a wide range and subtle beauty. The smooth jazz and orchestral swells are damn decent, and I want this soundtrack just by itself. Though the opening and closing tracks are pretty generic J-pop ballads without much sticking in my memory, Saya's theme is catchy as all hell. Seriously, give the music a chance if nothing else. Besides an odd shock and some hopeless promises, Bloodsea is a pretty forgettable sit, and I doubt I will reference back to it much in the future. But special thanks to Kathy Anthony for suggesting this review. But next time, I'm finally relenting. Since I was requested again, and actually this was my first recommendation, I am covering the classic, iconic, 74-episode beast of a mystery series, Monster. Yeah. And you thought my Outlaw Star video was long.